Commodity, overall decrease of $55,588. No change in general funds, but a decrease in federal of $41,188 and a decrease in other special funds of $14,400. Small equipment and needs for running the CLOC, the State Emergency Logistics Operations Center, are expected to be less, obviously, as we're looking for, hopefully, for COVID to be tapering off in 2022. And we expect for most purchases to be made with CARES funds and finished in 2021. So that's why you see that. Capital equipment, overall increase of $145,178, a decrease of $801 in general funds, and an increase in federal of $145,979. Increase is due to the purchases to be made to bring the warehouse and MEMA proper, MEMA's main campus, in order with the purchase plan of the 911 grant awarded to MEMA. So that will account, that grant funds are accounting for the 911 grant that will come in. That makes sense. Vehicles, we did request a slight increase in vehicles of $36,500, and then a decrease in our other special funds for that. The agency's vehicles, we have been slowly replacing them. We still have vehicles that were given to us by Nissan from Katrina. So we have vehicles that are very old, and with our folks going out into the communities, it's dangerous for them to be driving the older cars. So there's that explanation there. No change in subsidies in this grant, in this budget. The grants that are paid out through this budget are not our public assistance and our mitigation, so that's why you don't see much of a change in that. The overall change, at the bottom, you'll see the summary. General fund, an increase of $1.3 million, a federal increase of $140,000, and other special funds, we had a decrease of $284,000. And again, that's because of the renovation of our Joint Information Center. I know I went through that quickly. Any questions?
Yeah, I'm going to have some questions on some of this, but let's talk a little bit bigger picture type thing real quick. With respect to all of the coronavirus expenses through the state, does that run through 722?
Okay. I had a feeling y'all would want to discuss coronavirus expenses and CARES Act, so I have some summaries for y'all as well. The CARES Act, there were separate funds that were made for the buckets of CARES money that we have been given. We have three. We were given three altogether. Two have been closed. We have one that's remaining that's from the governor. Those I did tie to the 722 budget, the bottom one that you'll see. Those were tied to that one. As far as the COVID fund, additionally, when this all started, DFA created us a grant fund that was just, I hate to say, it's running at a deficit. It's just open-ended. And that is tied to our 722 budget.
Okay. So I want to, just for clarification, members of the committee will see, do they have this as well? Yes. Okay. You'll see there are four pages on our budget sheets that we have, our worksheets. If you go back to the third page, it's got 723, which is the COVID-19 funds. Mm-hmm. This is, was this part of the CARES Act money that we appropriated?
723 and 724, yes, sir. Okay,
so 723 was the part of the money that we sent to you through our appropriated funds from CARES Act, correct? Okay, and then 724 was the local cities and county funds that we appropriated through the legislature last session.
Correct.
Yes. Okay. So
we've completed. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yes. 724 was the $70 million that we were given, that we were appropriated to distribute out to the counties and municipalities. That was sent out. MEMA was allotted $500,000 out of that for administrative expenses. Those have been dispersed. That money was swept by DFA back in December.
Okay.
Um,
And
720
723?
723, yes, sir, was the 40 million that y'all gave us. That was also dispersed. What we did was, the outstanding, currently, as of today, MEMA's outstanding purchase orders that we have for PPE is $138 million. We took the 40 million that was given to us. Some of that 40 million, as y'all recall, was put in legislation for us to purchase the warehouse. Some funds were spent towards that. And then we also, that money was applied towards PPE. So you will see there's two handouts that you have, this right here, and then this summary right here. The one that doesn't have the yellow on it, this is our 40 million, that's how it was spent. You don't have it? I'm sorry. Yes, that one. The 40 million was spent, $977,483 was spent on salaries. Contractual was $441,597. That contractual can be our, what do you call them? We hired a company that helps do project worksheets, file our stuff with FEMA. We also hired a company called Debris Tech that is our inventory tracking system. So any PPE that comes in, they log it in and we can track where it went. And so that helps us with our FEMA reimbursements. If FEMA wants to know how many masks were sent to a hospital or where they were sent, that covers that. Commodities, $34,832,037. That was applied to the outstanding debt. So basically, when all this happened in March, DFA gave us a fund that was kind of like an open checkbook, just said, go do what you got to do. We bought everything, and the PPE that was purchased and applied to that, that's what that 34 million was applied to pay down that debt, because they were paying out those POs and paying the companies with state funds. So we used those CARES funds of federal money to pay back the state. If that makes sense. Capital expenditures, the 3.2 million, you'll see that covers our warehouse. The warehouse was just over $2 million. We had to make some renovations to the warehouse. We had to put in, I mean, you can imagine with the state stockpile of PPE, we've had to put in cameras, security, all kinds of stuff to, yes, racking system, all kinds of stuff to get the warehouse up to where it can house the PPE. PPE has to be housed at a certain temperature. To house hand sanitizer and disinfectant, the HVAC system in the warehouse was functioning off of open flame. Well, you can't have that with disinfectant hand sanitizer, so we had to replace that kind of stuff. It's just been a whirlwind, to be very honest with you. And that's what you'll see, the capital expenditures. We did have some funds, you'll see where the cash swept, $457,801. And the explanation for that was, in that legislation, it said that the money had to be swept by a certain time. We were down to the wire. We had some things that did not come in time, and the POs were being held against this fund, and we had to move them quickly. But we were literally to the day thinking that some of the things that we had ordered for the warehouse would come in. They just didn't. So those items were not put on state funds. They have been moved to, the governor has so far given us 32 million and out of his CARES. And so you'll see that right here. That's this sheet too. We have used those funds to apply the remainder of the things that didn't come in and hit that 40 million that the legislature gave us have been paid out of this fund.
Okay, so the reason why I'm asking all this is that eventually, if I remember correctly, you're going to need a deficit appropriation.
Yes, sir, we
for
will. Now,
these, and it's just going to come from federal funds, though, correct? Will they come from federal or other funds other than general?
For the reimbursement on the debt, yeah, so.
The deficit appropriation is really is going to be a spending authority for federal funds that we will receive.
the bulk of it, yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, normally our PA grants are 75-25. 75 is reimbursed by FEMA, 25 is the state share. Now, President Biden did sign 100%. The COVID grant is 100%. However, that has a timeline on it, unfortunately. So,
And it went into effect January the 21st.
yes, sir.
So So everything up to that point will be 75-25 reimbursement, is what we've been working on. But everything from this point, from January 21st through the end of this year,
Yes, sir.
based on what we understand
No.
now, will be 100% reimbursed.
He is correct. It does kind of, it's, while it's a blessing, it does kind of knock us because up to this point, the state of Mississippi has spent, well over $100 million on PPE. So 75-25 is how that will be applied. We will need to get a 25% match for that. So you're
That's a
looking.
significant number.
Yes, sir, it is. Now, if you don't mind, let me go to one other thing I would like to point out. I did a summary of our disaster trust fund, which I know a lot of people, there's been a lot of talk about the disaster trust fund. Disaster trust fund is what MEMA uses to pay, and I keep, to pay the state's match as far as FEMA grants. So most of our grants from FEMA, like I said, are 75-25. FEMA reimburses us 75%, the state takes the other 25%. That comes from this disaster trust fund. And you'll see this list right here. What I did was I took 2 years. I started in January of 2019 and went to this January and did a list of all the disasters, all the events that have happened. So this encompasses events that didn't turn into disasters because you have to reach a certain threshold. So this encompasses everything, and you can see how it was spent: salaries, travel, contractual, and so forth. At the bottom, you'll see there's a line of unassigned expenses. The disaster trust fund wording in that is very strict as to how we can spend those funds. It does allow us to pay for some administrative expenses for recovery and mitigation, and also for items that don't have grants. So when we have disasters and you hear about individual assistance, it's usually harder, gentlemen, correct me if I'm wrong, to get an IA declaration. And so a lot of those expenses hit the disaster trust fund, but that's where your constituents are. Those are the ones that are being individually hit. So our response to them and our individual assistance area, most all their expenses are paid out of here because they're responding to the public. And again, these numbers are 2 years worth of expenditures.
So I apologize for
No,
cutting
sir, go
you
ahead.
off for 1 second. We've got less than about 5 minutes left. I want to make sure that I give my committee members an opportunity to ask any questions you have. Mr. Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've just got a couple as far as with the PPE that was being purchased before any disaster, before this COVID outbreak. Y'all have a general number of what you know you can expect to pay for different PPE. What is the over cost that the agency, when it got into the bidding war with the mask and a lot of sanitizers, how much did it escalate? And under state law, when we are declared under an emergency, prices are supposed to be somewhat stabilized and not go through the roof like
Yes.
this has happened. And is there are y'all involved in any investigative work as far as price gouging?
I'll let him speak to that. We did have some issues on the mask. I mean, Director Michelle likes to say we had to buy things on the black market, and literally we did. You want to speak to that?
Oh, there's no doubt we got, There's no doubt that we paid exorbitant costs for masks. And I'm aware of the laws under an emergency, but we were literally having to buy stuff from overseas and from the black market. We literally did. When it was really, really bad on the front end trying to get PPE. Now there's been so much that's in country, we've been able to, it's just supply and demand, so prices have come back down. We're not seeing that now. It's a much more calm environment, and there's a lot of inventory in the United States. But when we were first trying to do this, we were fighting to find it, and then once we found it, we had to literally get brokers to go in and put their hands on it because there were other states and buddies of mine that were literally buying containers that did not have PPE in it, only to find it when it arrived. So we were having to find brokers that could find it for us. Then we had to fight and compete to get it on airplanes because we were competing with the federal government as well, because when the air bridge was put into place, and I don't think the federal government intended that, but states like us were having to fight not only against crooks, but we were also fighting against the federal government. So it was really a messy situation. So we did, in fact, pay. So prior to COVID, you could go into Lowe's, buy a 10-pack of N95 masks for about $2.10 a piece. We paid in upwards, in some cases, on the front end, upwards of over $7 a piece for that same mask.
Let me, if you don't mind, I will say this. We had a lot of brokers that tried to have us send money up front. Mississippi, I'm proud to say that we did not do that. We are not out any money. Our logistics division made contacts with 3M, and believe it or not, there are people out there that make fake 3M masks, and our logistics division has been sending copies to 3M. We actually had U.S. Marshals come in and seize some masks, and we did not pay for any of that. So I'm proud to say that our agency has done a great job on making sure that the state did not get duped in that, unlike some other states that are out several $1 million, but we did not do that. I'm very proud of our guys.
And we did, and I know we're running out of time, but just to your other point, once we got at least we got enough PPE out to the hospitals where they could maintain, we then instituted, and we didn't have to do this, but we did this because we wanted to be good stewards of the money. We did put in a request for bid, so we made the vendors then start competing. That drove prices down too. But we really didn't have many options on the front end to get PPE in. But I'm proud to say we put control measures in when we could, and we did that pretty early on and started bidding it out. That drove prices back into a much more acceptable.
Now, we did stay under state purchasing laws. I've been working close with Liz Welch and her purchasing team through there. He did say we put RFPs out. That was just for us to make sure that we got the best pricing. The timeliness is what required us to stay purchasing under emergency. But we wanted to make sure we were getting the best pricing, so we would send out RFPs, and within like a week, we would do the purchasing. But we just didn't have time to go in front of the procurement board and get 2 months' worth, so that's kind of how we went about that.
Yeah, I understand this ain't a normal SOP to write up by no means, but thank y'all for your answer.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr.
Any other
Chairman.
questions? All right, so, Mac, I'll get with you in the next couple of weeks. We'll get some of this stuff straightened out. We've got some things that I want to go through, just make sure we get your operating budget worked out, and that we understand that, and that the chairman has the information. And I know that y'all are keeping him in close tabs with respect to what that deficit funding looks like.
Yes, sir.
But we do need to do that. All right, so we've got to leave here in just 1 second, but I have to take this opportunity. Director Michelle, thank you. You helped my coast out. You've done a lot of really good stuff. I've had the pleasure of working with you while you were here, and you're leaving the state in a much better position than when you got here. It's amazing. I've worked with 4 different directors, and I can tell you that when I go and talk to or listen to my constituents and people around the state, they are honored to work with you. They're honored to work with MEMA. You've increased MEMA's stature in our state, and in times when we haven't had those great days in the past, you brought this agency back where it should be, where it needs to be. Mac, looking forward to working with you. Crystal, thank you.
Good
Thank
man
y'all,
right here.
gentlemen.
And I'm humbled by those words, Senator. It's been a pleasure working with you too, and all of you for that matter. Thank you for your support.
I know I get emotional when I think about this, but you people on the coast rely heavily on MEMA and what our emergency managers do, and you're the face of that for our state. And for the last year and a half, you've stood at the helm in a blowing gale for every single day of the year, except for that time that you decided to take off around Christmas to go lay in a bed. But I want to thank you for the bottom of our heart and for everyone in the state of Mississippi. Thank you very much.
We observe. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Mac, it's going to be a ride. It's going to be a ride.
I've watched them get hit by plenty of bullets over the last 18 months, so it's, I know what's coming.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll rise and report.